Greg Cosell going to join us to dive into the latest position group in this year's draft class. We've done edge rusher. We've done defensive tackle. We stay on the defensive side of the ball, knowing it's a focus for the Bills this spring, and we divvy up the cornerback class here. Greg, thanks for the time, as always. I am going to start with a guy that's gotten a little bit of mixed opinion of late, and it might be tied to the fact that he missed some time due to a turf toe injury and now dealing with a hamstring, but Will Johnson from Michigan, who certainly has ball production, but for some reason some people are getting a little hung up on some minor details of his career. What can you tell us?
You know, it's funny. I watched I think he played 6 games this year. I watched him last summer. I think I did 7 or 8 games last summer when he played pretty much the whole season. I didn't think his tape was as good in 2024 as it was in 2023.
Yep.
But, you know, you're dealing with a guy that's 6'2", 195. You know, I think he does have kind of the size length combination. He didn't play a lot of press this year at Michigan. I think I watched 4 of the 6 games. You know, he played a lot of off coverage. He played a lot of zone. They didn't play a ton of man coverage. He certainly has the traits of Brownie to play man, and I think he can play both mirror match press man and physical press man. You know, some might say he's a little high cut. There were times that I thought he was a little tight in his transitions. I guess he has no 40 time because he didn't run at the combine.
No.
He didn't run at pro day. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I think he's a good prospect. You know, look, everybody likes corners that are 6'2", and because he's played a lot of zone, that certainly kind of fits the general parameters of the Bills.
Yeah, when it comes to Johnson, Greg, me as a draft analyst myself, what stuck out to me in 2024, I don't know if it was, and you hinted at it, that the film wasn't quite as good in coverage. What stuck out to me was, and I don't know if it was business decisions or he was nursing an injury before he ultimately was out, the tackling was not nearly as good as it was in the previous 2 seasons. Not just talking about Johnson, but with him, you can start there. How much do you factor in the tackling reliability at the cornerback spot, especially if we're going to talk about the Bills and how much emphasis they put and how much of an onus they put on tackling on the outside at the cornerback spot?
I think it's really important for the Bills. I mean, I don't think teams necessarily draft corners based on their tackling. But, Chris, I agree with you. I mean, I just thought overall his tape wasn't as good, and I never know what to make of that because the guy's got pretty good traits. I mean, I remember, and you obviously saw the tape as well in 2023. I came away last summer after I watched 7 or 8 games thinking, you know, with a really good 2024 season, this guy sort of is – he's not exactly Patrick Surtain, but he's kind of – you know, you could make that kind of conversation because he's long, he's athletic, he can play press, he can play off. I didn't feel that way at all watching the tape this year. So I kind of got stuck. You know, I'm not, you know, and I don't have to do mock drafts, thankfully. So I'm just not sure exactly what he is right now, but it's clear he has the traits to be a really good player.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. We'll go to the Texas kid, Jahdae Barron, who delivered big plays in big games, often handled the opponent's top cover assignment. What can you see in his game?
Yeah, I think to me, the biggest issue that teams will have to decide with him, because he basically played in the slot in 2023 and predominantly played outside this year, although he did play a good amount in the slot as well. So the question is, if you draft him, what is he? Where are you putting? You know, the first day you line up in OTAs and you go through your walkthrough in shirts, you know, shorts and a T-shirt, where's Jahdae Barron? Where are you putting him? And I think, you know, it could be either way. Maybe, Chris, you disagree. I kind of see him more as a slot player, but I could understand teams looking at him as an outside corner. I just think he's got a really good feel in zone coverage. I thought he had a really good understanding of his positioning based on receiver splits. I thought he had really good eye discipline. He's obviously versatile. You know, this is kind of cliched, but I came away just feeling like, you know what, this guy's just a really good prospect, just a really good football player. And I think that, he's aggressive, he's physical, he'll tackle. I think he embraces the physical part of the game. I just really like the player. It's just a matter of where do you see him in the context of your defense, because I see him more as a slot, but hey, if someone sees him as an outside receiver, that's what he essentially played this year at Texas, and he certainly didn't do a bad job.
All right, Greg. So I agree with you that Barron is probably an inside guy. And again, there's probably others that could see him on the perimeter. Because the Bills most likely need someone to be that outside corner, I'm going to transition to Savon Revel from East Carolina. He's high cut. The ball production was through the roof at not the small school level, but he wasn't playing against, the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. Gets injured. Obviously, we can't really factor in the injury stuff. We don't know that. But what did you see from him on film, his upside, and maybe very specifically his fit as that other outside corner opposite Christian Benford in Buffalo?
Well, he was kind of a fun guy to watch. He made, he's a press man corner. I mean, again, does that mean he can't play off? No, of course it doesn't. But I thought, and again, this year, and I took a peek last year too, but mostly I looked at this year in detail. So he had 3 games: Norfolk State, Old Dominion, and App State. I mean, this guy, to me, may be the best press man corner prospect in the draft class. He's close to 6'2". He's got 33-inch arms. I thought he deployed them really strategically and effectively. He played targeted press man. I mean, there were times he just shoved receivers right out of the way, took them right to the sideline. To me, that's what he is. Now, I thought when he did play off, I thought there was a little bit of hip tightness and there were some sticky transitions, but he was fun to watch. Now, again, the Bills, they've sort of evolved a bit. Every team has to play more man, I think, in the NFL now with the way the quick game has evolved, and you have to play more man coverage, or at least you have to play more press. You can't just give guys free releases because of the quick game. You're just giving up throws. So, again, now you debate the level of competition. That's always a debate in draft meetings. But just if you're looking at traits and the way this guy played, he was a fun watch. But this guy, to me, is a press man corner.
Okay. Trey Amos from Ole Miss is another guy that has the requisite length. Worked out at the combine, did pretty well. I don't know if he blew the roof off of anything, but he tested well. What can you tell us about this guy who, playing every week in the SEC?
Yeah, see, this is the guy I was talking about that I think fits the Bills, because I think he's a really good zone corner. Now, he can play press, but, you're dealing with a guy that's 6'1", 195. Brownie, he actually ran really well at the combine. There was, a lot of talk before the combine. I actually did his tape in detail before the combine. So I really liked his tape. I watched 6 games, and I was very anxious to see his athletic testing, and it was pretty good. I think he ran a 4.43, and again, not that that means everything, but 40 times for corners usually do mean something. And I really thought that, he played zone really, really well. I thought he could read receiver splits and routes. I thought he communicated really well on the back end. I thought he had a good sense of spacing. I thought he kind of understood the conflict areas in zone. I thought he played with good eye discipline. I think this guy can play both, but I think he's a good zone corner prospect. And to me, I don't think there's that many of those guys in college. So when I see one, it stands out.
Yeah.
Greg, I got to ask you, I guess, about all of the big, long, athletic corners in this class. Darien Porter from Iowa State, who's even bigger than Revel at East Carolina. What are your general thoughts on him as what I think is kind of a throwback, like Seattle Seahawks, cover 3, super long corner? In today's NFL that you're mentioning is maybe transitioning to it actually being better if you're a little smaller and more fluid to stay with these twitchier receivers. How do you think Darien Porter fits, not even just with the Bills, but in the NFL at large?
Yeah, he's 6'3", 195. He ran ridiculously at the combine, 4.30. But this guy was a state champion in the 400 meters in Iowa. So, I mean, this guy can run. I still felt like watching him that he's still learning how to play corner, Chris, because this guy he was a receiver. He was a recruit as a receiver. And that's his first 3 years in college. That's what he did before he transitioned to corner. So, obviously he's got size and length. Everybody would love 6'3". I mean, that's just the way it is. People tend to like big and fast more than small and slow. So when you're 6'3", 195 and run a 4.3, that gets people's attention. Amazingly enough, his 10-yard split and 20-yard shuttle were phenomenal. But he doesn't necessarily play like that. Certainly not in off coverage. I mean, I thought in off coverage, and that's where, if you're not used to being a corner, you tend to struggle. Because when you're playing, press man, I'm not saying it's easy, but, you can just say, hey, you got that guy, and you're playing man. This guy, I think he might take a little bit of time to kind of develop as an NFL corner, but he has the length, he has the speed. Obviously, he's big. I thought he was physical enough in the run game. You could have a guy in 2-3 years that could be a really, really good player.
Yeah, his biggest negative is he's young at the position. That's basically the biggest negative on him, and it might push him down.
I think that showed up, Brownie, on tape. I think you could see that watching his tape.
And that might be the only thing that pushes him a little bit down the board, because you're going to have to trust your coaching to bring him along. But all the tools are there for sure.
He's Tariq Woolen to me, very similar to Tariq Woolen.
Yeah, you like that comp?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
size-wise, it makes sense.
Yeah, and Woolen went to UTSA as a wideout as well, and then transitioned, I think, his junior year to corner. So
took him time, and then he became good. Yeah,
because he can run too.
Yeah.
All right, another tall, long corner, Azareye'h Thomas, Florida State. This guy looks like he's got an NFL-ready body already.
Yeah, and another guy. I mean, Florida State, and we saw that last year with Renardo Green. They're a press man-heavy defense, so he plays that way a lot. And he's got tremendous length. Another guy like that, he's got really long arms for a corner. I mean, his arms are in the range of Will Campbell's arms. So you're dealing with a guy that played a ton of mirror match press man, physical press man. There were snaps where he really played to his length and physicality at a really high level, just smothering wide receivers. I think that you're dealing with another guy again that probably is going to need some work with the zone aspect of playing corner. Playing off coverage, reading splits, reading route combinations. Although you could look at a guy like this and say he's a boundary corner, and if you decide that's the case, there aren't as many route combinations to the boundary as there are obviously to the field. So, but this guy has the traits to be a boundary corner in the NFL.
All right, transitioning from these bigger 6'1", 195, 200-pounders to some smaller corners that still played on the outside. And I, again, want to ask, how do you feel about the evolution in terms of traits at the position? Quincy Riley from Louisville, not even 5'11", around 190 pounds, but played predominantly 86% of his snaps on the outside at Louisville last season. What did you see from him? Do you think he's better in zone because just by naturally being smaller, he's twitchier? Tell me your thoughts on him and his fit in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, he's just under 5'11". He didn't run great, so I mean that's the thing that could hurt him as far as the draft is. I happen to know the DB's coach at Louisville. He loves the kid. I mean, he thinks, and this is a coach that's been around a bit. He coached guys who play in the league, not a corner, but he coached Kevin Byard and Reed Blankenship in Middle Tennessee. He coached Jarvis Brownlee, who came out of Louisville last year. I kind of like Riley. I mean, he did play a lot more off coverage, so he has experience doing that. I don't think he'll end up being a high pick. I mean, I'm not sure he's a guy you take it. Is it pick 30 where the Bills
30,
pick?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would pick him there, but I think you're dealing with a guy that could be a solid NFL corner down the road, who can play both man and zone. I thought that in zone he was assignment sound. I thought he had good eye discipline. I thought he had a good understanding of route concepts. Zone is so Brownie, you and I have talked about this. I mean, this was the thing that killed Kaiir Elam, who obviously is no longer with the team. He just couldn't play zone coverage. I mean, it's that's hard to learn. People probably just think, oh, it's zone, you go play a spot. But now you got to start dealing with receiver splits, with route concepts and combinations. You have to understand the conflict areas in zone. You have to understand, midpoint concepts. There's a lot to understand that has to become intuitive. You can't be thinking this through while the play's developing.
Yeah. And I kind of liked Riley's instincts. I mean, he seems to be around the ball a lot. He had 8 interceptions the last 3 seasons and 27 pass breakups. I mean, it's not like they weren't throwing at him. And
no.
I just liked his instincts and always being around the ball. I think that's something that the Bills covet in a DB.
Very quickly here, too.
I'm sorry, the 27 pass breakups is a lot, because sometimes when I look at stats for a corner, you see like 5 pass breakups, and they have 12 in their whole career. So, I mean, that's an interesting stat.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight what you had said previously, Greg, that being a draft analyst for as long as I have, it's kind of felt like the zone corner label has been kind of misidentified where, oh, hey, he's just a zone corner. He's not quite as good as a Darrelle Revis man coverage on an island corner. But you astutely point out, and I think it's important for listeners and viewers to understand, coming from you, that playing zone is very, very challenging mentally for a lot of these cornerbacks. That, Kaiir Elam had all the physical traits in the world, but just ultimately couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And Chris, I've been fortunate in my career to sit in at training camp with like defensive backs coaches, and the stuff they talk about. There's so much detail and nuance and subtlety involved in playing zone. It's not just, hey, you got that cat, I mean, there's so much going on. And if you just can't pick that up, and it has to become, like I said, instinctive and intuitive. You can't be thinking that through. So that's hard. And for guys who haven't played much of it, you've got to be taught all that.
Yeah. Denzel Burke, Ohio State, 4-year starter.
Yeah.
I know his 40 time, 4.48. It's okay. I just like him as a technique tackler.
Yeah.
And again, another guy with ball production, 28 pass breakups. I mean, I know he played a lot of games over 4 years, but that's pretty good.
He sure did. And you know what? You're not hearing his name a whole lot right now. And, for some reason he seems to have dropped off. But I kind of like Denzel Burke. I mean, I think that he's a pretty good prospect. Again, who knows how the draft's going to play out, but it doesn't seem like he's being talked about as a top 40 type player. But I think his athleticism is pretty high end. I think he's got pretty good quickness. I think he can carry vertical routes in both press and in off coverage. I mean, I like Denzel Burke, I'm not sure what the issue is and why he seemingly has dropped. I've watched him for 3 years in a row now because I kept thinking he would come out. So I've seen a lot of tape of Denzel Burke, and I think he's a pretty good player. I mean, he's not as big as you'd ideally like, obviously, but, he certainly can play press, and there's a physical component to his game as we're seeing here. I mean, he's one of those guys that he's willing to embrace the contact element.
Yeah, it's like he plays bigger than his size kind of player. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, who knows how the draft's going to play out. You're not hearing his name among the better corners in the league, so I don't know what that means. But I remember after the 2022 season, and that's when I first watched him that summer, he was being talked about as like a top 10 pick in the draft kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you never know how all this works out, but I like his tape.
Last one from me, Greg. The Blazer in this class, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky.
Yeah.
He's small, but he ran sub 4.3 at the combine. Tell me what you think about him. Again, and I think maybe the Bills are going to deploy more man coverage, but just his coverage versatility. What do you think about him from that perspective? And again, it's kind of a theme for my questions. How do you see him holding up as a tackler in the NFL?
Yeah, which is a great question. But I did him last summer, and I loved him. I love this kid. I mean, believe it or not, I spoke to someone who actually likes him more as a corner than Travis Hunter. So, but I really liked this kid when I did him last summer. I think he's got the physical traits to pretty much do anything. Now he's not super big, and that for some, every team has their critical factors. Some coaches say, I don't want a corner under 6 feet, all that kind of stuff. You know how that goes. But I just really like the way he plays. He can play press. He can play off. I think that, to me, Chris, I thought that he was aggressive and competitive as a run defender. I thought he took on blocks with physicality. I thought he made tackles. I mean, at 5'11" and a quarter, 183, is he going to, just lay people out? Of course not. But that's not what you're looking for with a corner. You just want to make sure that he's willing to get involved physically as a tackler, and I think he is. But this kid is just really fluid. He's such an easy mover. I certainly didn't expect 4.28, but I thought he'd run well. But 4.28 is exceptionally, good for a corner. But he's a player I really like.
Yeah, and when he's running 4.28, you can check the box of, does he have makeup speed if he's beat on a play?
Yeah.
Answer, yes. So he definitely has that. And yeah, I like the fact that he's not afraid to get his nose dirty in run support, despite, being, I guess, what you would call narrow-framed, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to stick his nose in there and be a factor in the run front.
And like Chris was just saying, too, the game has changed a bit, and we've talked about this, Brownie, through the last couple of years with all the, the RPOs and the quick game throws, that in normal down and distance, it's hard to get to the quarterback. So you have to disrupt receivers now. And so you have to be able to play press. And you don't have to be 6'3", 210 to play press,
Right.
But you have to be able to line up and disrupt receivers, or you're just giving guys throws, and you don't want to do that.
Right. Last thing here, and this concerns the Bills' defense philosophically. We know traditionally they've subscribed to zone coverage. Last year, they went heavy man late in the year. I'm just curious for your take on it as to whether or not you see it as a one-off, because their pass rush struggled to get pressure with just 4. They often had to blitz, so more people committed to blitz means less people in coverage, and they had to play more man. I know they have Bosa now, and you have to see how that looks, but do you think it was a one-off based on the circumstances at the time, or do you see them maybe shifting a little bit to more man going forward based on how the league is going?
I mean, I don't know what's in Sean McDermott's head, but I think they recognize that they struggled with a 4-man pass rush last year, and that's clearly why they went after Joey Bosa. So I think in an ideal world, Brownie, and again, we don't know. I don't think that they necessarily want to up their blitz frequency and play a ton more man. I think they want to play what they've played for years and are really, really good at. And I think that's one reason they went after Bosa. But, maybe just seeing the way the league is, and obviously when you play someone in your division like Miami, although they seem to have Miami's number with no problem, but when you play teams like that, you do have to line up and play more press, whether it's pure man or whether you're just trying to disrupt receivers. You can play press you can play press and cover 4 too. There's this myth that you can't play press and cover 4. You can. So we'll see how it goes, but I think they know. Let's put it this way. I don't think that Sean wants to be a heavy blitz team coach. I think he wants to be a selective blitz coach.
Right.
And I don't think he wants to have to rely on it to generate pressure. I think he wants to use it strategically, but not have to use it. And there's a difference between that.
Yeah, because there's this whole chicken and egg thing going on with what the Bills need in the draft.
Right.
They need help up front. They need help on the back end. And then you're trying to decipher, do they need a do-everything corner, or are they going to invest so heavily in the front end of their defense that they can get back to maybe playing a player like a Levi Wallace, or, like that. So that's
right.
kind of the conundrum we're all in here, because they have needs at the front of their defense and the back. So you're trying to peg what they want, and it's hard to nail it down.
Well, I think that no matter how you play, I think every coach would tell you that they'd like to be able to rush the quarterback with 4. Because then you have 7 in coverage.
Yeah.
And, once you start taking people out of coverage, it limits the kinds of things you can do on the back end. And obviously then offenses know that, based on film study.
Yeah.
And it's easier, for offensive coordinators to attack 6 in coverage than 7 in coverage. So, but we'll see. I mean, the Bosa signing did tell you that they clearly needed to upgrade their pass rush.
Yeah. Greg, thanks as always. Appreciate all the insight on
Thanks,
the cornerback
Greg.
class. We'll catch up with you next week for another position group to be determined. Thanks, Greg.
All right, guys, that was fun. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.